A judge sides with the Biden administration on forcing Christian colleges to open women's dormitories, bedrooms, and showers to biological males. We have a decrease in support of Black Lives Matter, and crime experts expect to see violent crime to increase and shatter records. And I have a lot to say about that. Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. Before we get into our lead story today, please take a moment right now to hit that like button. It really does help the YouTube algorithm push my video out there to viewers who have not seen my content or my channel. And if you enjoy new conservative talk shows like the Bald Brad Show, please make sure you hit the subscribe button right now, as well as the bell notification button, so you're notified whenever we go live, which is every Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And with that being said, our lead story of the day comes from our friends over at Blaze Media. If you're not already a member over there, please go over and become a subscriber today. It is written by the man, the myth, the legend. Yes, folks, you said it correctly. Phil Shiver, and he titles it, Judge Sides with Biden, Rules that Christian College Must Open Women's Bedrooms and Showers to Biological Males. Phil starts off by saying a federal judge this week rejected a Christian college's request to bypass new rules under the Biden administration that force religious schools to open their dormitories, including shared bedrooms and shower spaces, to members of the opposite sex. A judge issued the ruling Wednesday, denying the College of the Ozarks a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction that would have provided temporary protection for the school while its federal court case is pending. The school filed a lawsuit in April arguing the Biden administration was forcing religious schools to violate their beliefs by opening up female dormitories to biological males and vice versa, under subject of punitive damages, six-figure fines, and attorney fees. You constantly are seeing the left encroaching upon our religious freedoms to force us to do things that go against our religious beliefs, whether it's a Christian college, anything Jewish, anything Muslim, Islam, Buddhist, whatever it is, right? Whatever your religious belief is, the government has no right to force you to do something that goes against your religion. And you're constantly seeing this from the left. The left goes, oh, well, you're discriminating against me. Thus, because you're discriminating against me, I'm going to force you to do something that you don't believe in. That is tyrannical. That is wrong, and that is scary. You saw like a perfect case of this years ago with the baker, right? The baker had a certain religion that he followed. You had, I believe, is either a lesbian couple or gay couple, LGBTQ couple that wanted a wedding cake, and they just demanded that this guy make them their cake. They couldn't go across the street to another bakery. They couldn't go find another bakery. Hell, if nobody made you the damn cake, just bake the damn cake yourself. Let's be honest with each other, right? Sometimes a homemade cake or a cake right out of the box. We all love the Betty Crockers. I'm a big Betty fan, okay? Sometimes those cakes are better than the store-bought cake, so make your own damn cake. You don't have to force somebody to make a cake for you, especially somebody that doesn't believe in what you do and it goes against their religious freedoms. But, you're going to force them to do it. You're going to prove your point. You're going to say that you're discriminated against and yada, yada, yada. And you're going to force that baker to do it. You're going to make them file a lawsuit, pay all these fees and all this stuff. And it's constant that they're trying to do this. And this is an overreach of government, by the way. This is extremely wrong. I don't see this getting through. I don't see this being approved by the federal courts. I do have hope and optimism that our courts still are not tainted by the leftist view. Again, you're still going to see judges like Roseanne here is her first name. I don't even know how the heck to pronounce her last name here. But you see certain leftist judges that are kind of pushing this through. So that is a little bit kind of scary, because even a lame Christian as well as American like me could see that you're kind of overstepping your boundaries here as far as government goes, especially the Biden administration. And this comes as no shock. We all knew that Biden was suckling at the leftist teat here, and he's going to push the leftist agenda, which is why we have a country that is in shambles right now, rather than when we had Trump, there was order for the most part as far as how the government and how how our economy was ran. There was, of course, chaos on the social fabric side of things, which we knew would happen with Trump because we already saw that during the election. So we know that was going to ultimately follow through into his presidency as well. So there was no shock there. But again, at the same time, there is no shock that the Biden administration is trying to encroach on our religious freedoms. And it's kind of crazy that he would even side with something like this as a proclaimed Catholic, right? This guy is supposedly religious. This guy supposedly goes to church every Sunday, right? Follows the scriptures. But, you know, it's just a public ploy. This guy doesn't follow the scriptures. This guy only pretends. He's a politician. He's out there to put a certain image, right? That's why he wears the aviators. You know, he's like Tom Cruise in Top Gun, except he's 85 and he's a geriatric guy that's a freaking president of the United States that's sleeping every single day, pretending to go golfing. Holy crap. We saw that video last week. If you haven't seen the video of Joe Biden golfing, he hit the ball backwards, okay? So I'm kind of deviating here, but this stuff is nuts. And again, we have to have faith in our federal system here or else everything kind of falls apart. It goes on here to say, after President Joe Biden issued an executive order titled Preventing and Combating Discrimination on the Basis of Gender Identity or Sexual Orientation in January, the Department of Housing and Urban Development put forward a directive in line with the Biden administration's new interpretation of sex. Now, notice they say new interpretation of sex because they're right. For all of human history, as far as we're aware, there was only male or female, but now it's not zeros and ones. It's just you could be anywhere in between. You could be a dragon if you want. You could be a kitty cat if you want. You could be a horsey, right? We could be a doggy. We've all seen videos of people believing that they are those things, that they're not a male or female. Hell, they're not even human, right? So that's where we're at nowadays. And there's nothing that's defined, right? The left want to make everything generic, everything generalized, so nobody knows what the hell is going on. So everybody's freaking confused and nobody can wrap their head around it. And by the way, when you're confused and you can't wrap your head around it and you try to ask questions, that's when you get kicked out of the school. And we reported on that about a month ago. A student asking questions, trying to wrap his head around something, trying to get answers, and ultimately they suspend the student because he was just asking questions based on things he was trying to understand what the leftists were teaching, and the leftists were openly saying, look, we're trying to keep it generalized. That's the whole point of it. If you keep things generalized, nobody knows what the hell's going on. So that's where things are going. And I think it's interesting that it's preventing and combating discrimination on the basis of gender, identity, and sexual orientation. Look, if you have a religious institution, if you have a private institution, they have every damn right to discriminate whoever the hell they want. I'm a full believer that a person that owns a business, that owns a university, can discriminate on whoever the hell they want, right? Because all you're going to do is just go to another business. I'm mostly talking about the baker here, but also specifically religious institutions like this. Now, if it's a public institution, you know, that's doing their thing, you know, they're doing their thing, if you get what I'm saying. What I'm talking about is on a business aspect, on a religious aspect, you have every damn right to be discriminative of who you allow in, who you serve your goods to, or you perform a service for. You have every right to discriminate. And the reason is because, look, you're just going to lose business on your end. I don't think you should discriminate on a business standpoint. I think you should try to serve everybody you possibly can. But on a business standpoint, again, you're only hurting yourself, where somebody could just go across the street to, for example, another baker and get their cake baked, and you just lost that business. And by the way, word of mouth is then nobody's going to want to go to you anymore because you don't want to bake cakes for one person. Then they're going to make them think, well, you don't want to bake a cake for me, then there must be something wrong with me. So now you just kind of destroyed your business in that aspect. Now, again, that is a very simplified example and kind of an extreme example. But again, a business should not be forced to produce a good or service to you. Okay, that's called slavery or an indentured servitude. So it's just nuts what the left is constantly doing to this country, and it's creating a bad precedent for everything else. That if something like this goes through, you would imagine you're going to start seeing this in private high schools and so forth with high schoolers, which you can imagine is going to be a little bit scary because hormones are crazy in high school. We've all been there. It says here, the directive holds that entities covered by the Fair Housing Act cannot discriminate against someone based on their sexual orientation or gender identity, meaning that a transgender person who is biologically male but identifies as female must be permitted to share a dormitory space such as bedrooms, bathrooms, and showers with female students. The government cannot and should not force schools to open girls' dorms to males based on its politically motivated and inappropriate redefinition of sex, Alliance Defending Freedom Senior Counsel Julie Marie Blake said in a statement. The Religious Liberty law firm is representing the school in its legal fight. And I think they have a strong case to win here, because what the Biden administration is doing about recategorizing sex and allowing transgender males, or let me get this right, a biological male that thinks it's a female, to go and just room with a female is a little bit sketchy here, because you could see a lot of things happening with that system falling apart. And you got these guys that hormones are going crazy. I'm going to identify as this. We could share dormitories now, and you just have utter chaos. But the left love chaos. Have you noticed that? I mean, look at the way the country's being ran right now. There's nothing but crisis after crisis after crisis. And you know what's funny is there's actual crises going on right now, but there was no crises really going on during the Trump administration. I mean, you had COVID-19, you had an early on immigration issue that happened that was mostly due to the Obama era, and Trump was trying to fix it. But the left categorized everything under the Trump administration as a crisis, whereas under the Biden administration, everything's just a challenge, or it's kind of problematic, but we'll see, we'll kind of fix it, not a big deal. That's how the media handle it. That's how the Biden administration handles it. So things are going crazy when everything's just a challenge or problem. There's no crises going on, or crises, however the hell you want to freaking call it. But it says here, women shouldn't be forced to share private spaces, including showers and dorm rooms with males, and religious schools shouldn't be punished simply because of their beliefs about marriage and biological sex. You are damn right. Government overreach by the Biden administration continues to victimize women, girls, and people of faith by gutting their legal protections, and it must be stopped. And I like the wording here, gutted, right? It takes a while to slowly remove everything that's already been in place. And you're seeing the government, the federal government, the leftists, the Biden administration, the Democrats, incrementally encroaching and removing your freedoms. It's not going to all happen at once. It's going to happen over the course of time. And by the way, it already has been happening over the course of time. And on my show, we talk a lot about the Second Amendment. How, look, they're not going to take your guns tomorrow. They're not going to take your guns in a year. They're slowly going to do it, you guys. They're slowly going to remove your religious freedoms. That's how it's done over the course of history. Now, were there times in history where basically your freedoms just ultimately vaporized in other countries, other nations? Yes, in a matter of moments. But usually in the course of history, those types of things, your freedoms, your rights, are slowly removed over time, and then they're ultimately vanished. And that's what we're constantly seeing from the Democrats. They don't believe that. The Democrats they don't believe that. They believe they're all for upholding the Constitution. They believe they're all there to uphold your rights, your religious freedoms, but their actions say something different than their words. And we're seeing that right now. You're seeing that with the religious baker. You're seeing that with what's happening to the Jews. You're seeing that with anti-Israel. You're seeing that right now on forcing Christian colleges to have biological males room with biological females, to share showers with biological females as well. This stuff is getting nuts, and it's a little bit ridiculous. And yes, I'm holding it together today. I'm not getting as pissed as before. I had a great weekend. So we're kind of quote unquote chilling today. But this is actually very serious, because if this does somehow not get upheld by the federal system, our judicial system, then yeah, we're going to be in big trouble here, because now that this goes through, you're going to see a snowball effect on everything else below it. The College of Ozarks is a private Christian liberal arts college in Point Lookout, Missouri. That's an interesting name. That since its founding more than a century ago has held a belief that biological sex is assigned by God and is unchangeable. And by the way, that's a lot of religion out there, okay? That's why leftists tend not to be religious. They tend to be atheist. They don't tend to follow something. Now, it is a little bit dicey, and I'm kind of deviating here. When I say the leftists aren't religious, I don't mean that they kind of practice what we would call religion, right? Christianity, Hinduism, Catholic, Islam, Judaism, things like that. They are very much religious in the aspect of they don't believe in God, but they don't question that at all. And you know who talks a lot about this is actually Dennis Prager. He talks a lot about how the left do not even question their faith of whether there is a God or not a God. They just fully believe there is no God. Where if you look at religious people, and I'm just going to use the Jews as well as Christians and Catholics kind of lumped in all at one, is believing in a singular God. We question that every now and then, right? We're constantly struggling with that battle of faith of, is there a God? If there isn't a God, why not? If there is a God, why? How do I follow it? How do I abide by it? So we're constantly in that balance, that struggle, and we call it a struggle with God. And you don't see that from the left. And by the way, the left, again, it'd be kind of tough for them to believe in the Christian text due to the ultimately the Old Testament for the Jews as well, or whatever the other faiths believe in about biological sex is being assigned by God, because, well, they don't believe in biological sex. So it kind of falls apart on that level. In response to the ruling, the school's president, Jerry Davis, acknowledged he and staff were disappointed in the ruling, just as I am, but announced that they would be appealing so that schools are not forced to open women's dorm rooms to males and violate their religious beliefs. Absolutely right, but there you have it, folks. The Biden administration and judges are ultimately siding with leftists here on ultimately removing incrementally your religious freedoms here, and it's starting, yes, or has started already with businesses and other examples that have happened in the past. But you're also seeing it being pushed forward now that Biden's in office here on forcing Christian colleges to open women's dormitories to biological men as well as showers. So just a bunch of nutso stuff going on. But also in today's news, we have declining support for Black Lives Matter. This also comes from Blaze Media. It is written by Paul Sacca and is titled, "New York Times Finds Support for Black Lives Matter Plummeted Since Last Summer, Makes Zero References to Months of Riots." Of course not. Why would the New York Times, a leftist agenda outlet, ever talk about something like the riots that ultimately were being done and promoted by Black Lives Matter and Antifa too? They kind of go hand in hand now. They, you know, the fist and the kind of the gripping of the arms. Yeah, that's Antifa and Black Lives Matter working together to destroy this country from the inside out. It says here, the 1-year anniversary of the death of George Floyd occurs next week on May 25th. Following the deaths of Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Arbery last year, support for Black Lives Matter skyrocketed. Well, yeah, because Trump's racist, right? Trump's America is ultimately racist. Police are out there hunting unarmed black men. We did a report. There was a survey done, an observational study by Skeptic Research Center, and we covered this. And if you want to see the video, it's somewhere in the catalog. But it talks about police shootings, black homicides. Go ahead and check that video out. But it talked about how a ton of moderates, basically half of leftists, or should I say liberals, half of leftists and liberals, believe that upwards of 10,000 or more unarmed black men are being killed a year. Folks, it was only 13 in 2019, and it was 18 in 2020. But there's about 50%, actually it's a little bit more than 50%, believe that 10,000 or more are killed in the streets every year. That's insane. That shows you the power of the mass media. It shows you the power of indoctrinating our children. It shows you the power the left have upon our culture, where people are roaming this earth believing this crazy crap. I mean, it's not even in the realm of 10,000 or more. It's not even the realm of 100. And by the way, the 100 comes across from for conservatives as well as moderates. I think it's like 35%. I could be getting that percentage wrong, but I think it's 36% of moderates and conservatives think that roughly 100 or more unarmed black men are shot every year by police. And it was 13 and then 18. Not even in the realm. So, and by the way, some of those would still be justified shoots because, say, they're trying to ram a police officer like we just saw in video a few weeks ago. Or you're seeing them struggle with a police officer, trying to render the police officer unconscious, so the police officer shoots them. That's a good shoot. You also seeing cases where they're trying to reach for the police officer's weapon, so the officer shoots them, which is a good shoot. So not all of those 13 in 2019, not all of those 18 in 2020 were not good shoots. So the number is actually even smaller than that. But the left don't want to talk about that. The left don't want to talk about the riots. The left don't want to talk about the culture that they're creating within this country that's going to destroy it. Why? Because it goes against the agenda. What's the agenda? That America is inherently racist and it must be destroyed and rebuilt from the bottom to the top. Absolutely nuts thinking. Absolutely just unreal time we are living in. That's for damn sure. However, just as fast as the support for Black Lives Matter soared, the backing of the movement quickly plummeted, according to analysis from the New York Times. The so-called newspaper of record investigated the sudden and startling decline in support for Black Lives Matter, but did not make any mention of the riots that burned American cities for months, which often spawned the BLM movement and protest, which is absolutely right. It goes on here to say, notably, support for the movement peaked in the immediate aftermath of George Floyd's death and then swiftly declined. The New York Times article read. Now look, why would support decline? If you notice, there's a trend that happens, right? Whenever there's a police shooting, that's when support for Black Lives Matter goes up. But look, if these people really cared, this movement would keep going. Like, this movement wouldn't be declining. It would keep growing in numbers, right? You would at some point reach a peak because everybody would just be involved in that movement. But you're seeing that the left used ultimately police shootings as an agenda to ultimately dismantle the system. And so you'll see it again when there's another black man that's being shot, whether it's justified or not, by a white police officer. You're going to see this graph ultimately skyrocket again. And then you'll see it drop. And then you'll see this event happen again, and it'll skyrocket again, and then it will drop. Why? Because everybody's based on emotion and feelings. That's what the Black Lives Matter movement is. They don't want to look at the real numbers. They don't want to look at the damage that has been caused by their movement. They don't want to look at the overarching agenda that they have on their website by destroying the nuclear family. They don't want to look at those types of things that's ultimately going to destroy our social fabric and the great institutions that we have within this country. They don't want to see this country succeed. They just claim they want to see this country succeed for the betterment of their own movement, which ultimately, again, only hurts the American citizen. It doesn't benefit the American citizen. That doesn't mean that the Black Lives Matter doesn't have good points, these small, minute points within what they talk about, but the overarching theme of what they're pushing here of getting rid of the nuclear family, destroying certain institutions within our country, just claiming that we're a racist country from the bottom up, is just absolutely nuts. And you kind of even see an even bigger overarching theme here of the leftist movement is you have President Joe Biden in office, by the way, which was called a racist by his vice president during the election, but we don't want to talk about that. But here you see that overarching theme of us being racist only when a conservative or Republican president's in office, but then right when a Democrat or a leftist is in office, like Joe Biden, then you see that support that America, oh, well, maybe America's not that racist anymore. You know, the Democrats aren't racist, which are the ones that had involved the Ku Klux Klan within their party. But, you know, we can't talk about that because, you know, there was some make-believe big switch that happened and, you know, Republicans are the ones that racist. And I know I'm deviating here, but I want you to see that trend that constantly happens. When you got a conservative and Republican in office, all of a sudden racist things go through the roof, right? All of a sudden. But then when you have a Democrat or a leftist in office, now racism isn't really a big topic anymore. We don't really want to talk about it. Black Lives Matter support ultimately declines perfectly right when Trump comes into when Biden comes into office. So it's just funny how all that stuff works, but they don't want to talk about that because it doesn't support them. Notably, support for the movement peaked in the immediate aftermath of George Floyd's death and then swiftly declined, the New York Times article read. The decline was so significant that Republicans and white people have actually become less supportive of Black Lives Matter than they were before the death of George Floyd, a trend that seems unlikely to reverse anytime soon, unless there's another shooting, and then you're going to see that flip-flop. The article, which was written by Jennifer Chuddy and Hakeem Jefferson, noted that Republicans have supported the Black Lives Matter movement shortly after Floyd's death, which shocked the authors because they label the Republican Party as often characterized by its racial insensitivity and antagonism toward racial minorities. It's not that we don't look at racial things as an issue. We look at everything on an individual basis. That's where we're at, and then things can bloom out from there. The problem is the leftists and the Democrats start on the racial basis and never touch the individual. They never go down to the individual core. There's no mistake on an individual level. There's always something in the institutional level, the social fabric, that caused that individual to do a certain action. It was nothing else. It was never the individual's fault. It was never the way the individual was raised in their certain milieu. It wasn't anything to do with the individual. It was ultimately the system. It was ultimately America. It was ultimately the white man. It was ultimately what was developed from the founding of this country that was ultimately inherited as an evil or as a good within that person that ultimately justified what they did or didn't do, or what created an action that was bad or was good. It was never done on an individual basis. It's always done on a collective basis with the leftists, and that's exactly what the problem is. If you want to have a conversation with conservatives, you need to be on an individualized level. If you want to have a conversation with the leftists, you need to be on a collective and tribalistic level with them, as well as an emotional level. You can't talk numbers with them because they don't understand. They only understand feelings and emotions, which is why you're seeing the rise for Black Lives Matter when there's a shooting, and ultimately decline when there are no shootings. Because truthfully, people only say they care, but only for a little bit, and then they move on with their lives, which is sad. The reason for the drop seems to be shifting attitudes among Republicans and white Americans, two large and often overlapping groups. Some have wondered whether support for BLM, especially among white people, is genuine or merely virtue signaling, which is what authors suggested here, and which is what I'm suggesting as well. And it's not just among white people as well. I'm sure it's among African Americans as well as any race. But, you know, again, the left just want to continue to push this whole racial identity thing here and just talk about how white people are evil and virtue signaling. And again, I think the portion of that is true. I think you have these white liberals that are just ultimately just virtue signaling out there. I mean, they're predominantly the ones that are in the streets trying to advocate on behalf of African Americans, when the African Americans can easily advocate on their own behalf. And look, if there is something racist out there, then we should all band together and ultimately advocate for the decline of racism, because none of us like it as a country. America, oddly enough, I know the media won't say this, I know Democrats won't say this, and leftists won't say this, America is one of the least racist countries in the world. I don't even have to go abroad to know that. Hell, talk to anybody in other countries, or even go expand your viewpoint and go to other countries. Kind of nuts what goes on there. Nowhere in the New York Times article is the word riot found. Of course not. Why would it be? They're a leftist agenda news outlet. Since Floyd's death, there were regular riots across 140 U.S. cities. The looting and property damage from the riots, many of which were carried out by BLM supporters and Antifa, are estimated to be the most expensive in insurance history. The riots resulted in at least $1 billion to $2 billion of paid insurance claims, according to data released in the summer. Online commentators were quick to point out reasons why support for Black Lives Matter abruptly and massively tarnished. Twitter users noted that support crashed because of fiery riots, often linked to movement and several scandals, including the Black Lives Matter organization, including the group run by the trained Marxists, one of which went on real estate buying binge, and we saw that somebody bought like millions of dollars of property, one of the leaders of BLM, which was predominantly bought in a white area. So this person that's saying, oh, well, you know, white people are racist, capitalism doesn't work, and just a full-on Marxists, according to their own words, is benefiting from a capitalistic system. Look, it's really easy to shit on something when you're living in it and you're living a good life, but you don't want to move somewhere that has socialist ideas or is a socialist country. And I employ her to go out to Venezuela and just go live there for about 10 years and let me know how it works out for you with little money. Try to open a business, try to be successful in Venezuela under a socialist system. Let me know how that works. But, you know, she's a Marxist, and we'll kind of end it with that. But it goes on here to say the Washington Examiner reported the drop in support for Black Lives Matter probably has a lot to do with the true idea that Black Lives Matter being juxtaposed with the violence and rioting that accompanied many BLM protests nationwide last year, as well as the BLM national organization being exposed as run by shameless Marxist grifters, probably contributed to the decline as well. Now, I don't think there's one exact cause for the decline. I think it's a multiple of things. I think we get caught in a trap by just looking always at data and going, well, this is the deciding factor of what caused this drop. Sometimes that is the case, but when you're having massive organizations like this, when you're having a massive social structure that's put in place like BLM, there's many reasons and causes to why you're going to see a decline in trend when you're looking at graphs or you're looking at data. So sometimes we get caught in a trap by saying, well, it just has to do with the riots and people don't like the riots. I think there's a lot of aspects to BLM why they're not receiving support anymore, and one of them, again, being the riots, but I think also others being the damage that it's doing to our social fabric, such as trying to tarnish and get rid of the nuclear family. Other aspects of religion, you're seeing a Marxist here, so trying to evaporate the idea of capitalism as well. There's a lot of things and a lot of problems with BLM. And by the way, conservatives have been calling it out since the beginning. This is nothing new for us. Look, if we can tell if there's a good organization out there because we would support it even if it is on the other side. If the left have something good to show, if they have something good to present, conservatives don't have a problem hopping on board. But the second you start rioting, the second you start doing things or saying silly things, We're not for that. And we're not for that for our own side either. If there's Republican agendas, if there's Republican movements that are done, we don't support that. If the January 6th riots do come out as being strictly conservative, we don't like that. We're not for that. We're not for it in general. Whoever did that crap's a bunch of idiots, and we're open about that. We're not for that. But the mainstream media will continue to push, oh, Trump supporters this, Trump supporters that, Trump supporters are for this. We're not. No, I'm sorry, we're not. Actually, I don't know a single Trump supporter in my life or even out there. I've never seen actually a Trump supporter that does a show like mine or Ben Shapiro or Steven Crowder ever come out and openly say, hey, that was a good thing. That's really great for our country. We love that. That's exactly a conservative idea. Nobody thinks it's a good idea. Not a single damn Trump supporter that I know. I'm sure there's one out there. And you know what? They need to be told, look, that's not good. They need people in their life to tell them just because that person's a Trump supporter. And even if you think that something's wrong, you don't have any right to do what those people did, and those people should be in jail for a very long time. But there you have it, folks. The New York Times here finds support for Black Lives Matter is ultimately plummeting, and that is great, not only for the country, but also for those that ultimately maybe had their eyes opened up to seeing what the movement does and the chaos that it ultimately causes. Lastly here, we have a Emily Zanotti story from the Daily Wire. This shows here crime experts fear summer of 2021 could be more violent than record-setting 2020. St. Louis leading the way. If you're not already a member of the Daily Wire, please go over and become a subscriber today. We do use a lot of their content here for my show, and it's greatly appreciated what the Daily Wire does. God, I would love to work for them one day. It says here, experts who spoke to Fox News told the network that they expect violent crime to rise over the summer of 2021, following a particularly violent spring in cities like St. Louis, Missouri, New York City, and Chicago, Illinois. I'm getting that right. Okay, I messed up on a previous show and everybody hit me hard. It's not Illinois. It's Illinois. I learned. See, I do read the comments, guys. I do listen to you. And I screw up a lot in speech. Just to be quite frank, something you guys don't know about, I actually taught myself how to read. I did extremely poorly in school. So there's a few things that I taught myself how to do, which is predominantly mathematics, which is why I teach mathematics right now and I know it somewhat okay. But even if you hear the way I speak or the way that I even read, it's because I end up having to teach myself how to read and tell time. So please forgive me. Thank you for being kind to me in the comments and not continually rip me for saying Illinois, but Illinois. And I'll hopefully keep that corrected for the rest of my life because I hate making mistakes. But I do appreciate that. But if you look at all these cities, St. Louis, New York City, Chicago, if you're looking at these, there's a common theme here of what's going on. They're all leftist ran. You go to any leftist state, and what I'm thinking about doing is actually taking my camera down to Venice, going down downtown LA, and showing you guys what it looks like. Because when you see Hollywood movies, they always show you the nice parts of Hollywood, Beverly Hills, and LA. Again, that's where I live. They don't show you that the vast majority of it just looks like crap. If you see the way the sidewalks look, the streets look, the buildings look, guys, it's not glamorous. Like, there's a lot of people that have never been to Hollywood in LA. As somebody that's part of the Screen Actors Guild, has been in Hollywood my entire life, it's not pretty looking at all. And it's so funny because when you go down there, you're constantly reminded of, like, God, people come here to, like, look at this, like, dream of Hollywood and stars and glamour and all this stuff, and it's like, it's just not there. It's disgusting, actually. There's no glamour, glitz. There's nothing like that. I mean, in some aspects there are, but in the big picture, California's been ran, especially LA, by the left for extremely long time, and it's absolutely disgusting here. I would not come on vacation here unless you're going maybe to Disneyland or something like that. That's probably the only reason I would ever come here. It's not getting any better, a professor of criminal justice told Fox News Friday. Let's put it this way. New York City is already ahead of last year's pace, but last year the homicides and shootings really started spiking at the end of May and into June. So that would be the real tale of the tape, so to speak, to see what's happening over there. Big cities are expected to have the worst rates, with cities like St. Louis and Chicago already experiencing higher numbers than average. So if you look at New York, Chicago, St. Louis, Baltimore, you name the big cities that are having huge problems, we have the pandemic ending, people want to get out and do things again, and it's just a cocktail for a disaster for some. People have been pent up, holding things down, and finally when we have those freedoms, they kind of have that effort thing, and then they're going to commit violent crimes, homicides, things of that nature, so you're ultimately going to see crime increase, especially now that you're already leading the pace. I'm not sure what's going to happen to remedy that, and I think that's kind of the point that's being made here is that if numbers are already high and you have the pandemic ending, you expect those numbers to increase because more and more people are going to be going out into society and creating more chaos, more problems. The third week of May was particularly bloody as temperatures skyrocketed through much of the country, sending more people outside. According to Fox, 369 people were shot in the past 72 hours as of Friday afternoon. Over the weekend, Chicago's NBC News affiliate reported 36 people were shot in Chicago alone and 8 were killed. The New York Police Department reported this week that the city has seen a 350% increase in murders for the third week of May, year over year. St. Louis is, however, leading the way with the highest murder rate so far and the single worst rate for the city in half a century, per Fox News. Here are the numbers. St. Louis had 87 homicides per 100,000 residents in 2020. According to St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the worst rate in the country, the outlet reported. It's now at the highest rate in 50 years, even as the population has dwindled, meaning declined, in the same time period. Some city officials have blamed the spike in violence on the coronavirus pandemic, which would follow the national trend, except St. Louis also led the country before COVID-19 in homicides per 100,000 in 2019 with 65. So remember how I just said previously, a lot of the left, a lot of Democrats fall in this trap, and Republicans and conservatives too, in just pinpointing one reason, one cause for something or an event occurring, which is a common fallacy, a common mistake. There's a lot of reasons for something happening. Now, an overarching theme, could you maybe pinpoint something? Absolutely, kind of push that, but you're kind of pushing a very interesting narrative. And we see conservatives do that a lot. Heck, I do it on my show to push something as well. That doesn't mean what I'm pushing is false, but we can really pinpoint in that specific example an overarching theme. Say, for example, 90% of homicides were caused because of this one thing, but another 10% were caused because of this other thing. Well, of course, we're going to talk about the 90% because that was by far the majority reason as to why that specific event occurred. Now, if you're hypothesizing about, why, say, just for example, African Americans tend to have more violent crime on average than other races, then you'd be theorizing on why that would be. And if you talk to a lot of conservatives, kind of the overarching theme that we see on our end, mind you, there are many reasons and causes for that type of behavior happening. But one of the things that we are seeing on a statistical level is the two-parent household, where a lot of the people that commit these crimes don't have a father in the household. They only have a single mother in the household, or vice versa. So when you don't have two parents, it is shown in data that you're more likely to commit some sort of crime. It's the argument on the left side, nowadays as I'm losing my voice, is, well, the data that's being shown only shows, yes, one mother, but it's not, it's only showing the married side of things, is that there's still a father figure within the household. They're just not married. And if you're looking at the data on that level, it's even construed as well. So that data doesn't support things. And by the way, there is truthfully a little bit of a difference between a biological male and a biological father and a biological mother holding the same values within the household and having religious aspects within the household as well. But again, I'm kind of deviating from this, but I want you guys to be prepared what the leftists are showing nowadays, where they're kind of trying to tackle what the overarching theme of the conservative ideas are for this type of behavior happening of homicides, murders, shootings. And that's not all African American, by the way. There definitely are other races involved within this. So I don't want to just pinpoint it to one group. It's just one group tends to be more violent than the other. And I don't like looking at racial disparities in that way. I mostly look at the individual. But when the statistic reads a certain disparity with a certain race or certain group, I just want to read what the statistic is saying. I'm not going out of my way here to just pinpoint one race or, one example in that nature. It's just kind of the first thing that comes to my head here, mostly because I just talked about it literally on the last page that I just wrote in my book before I just started recording the show. So my book is actually helping me record this show a lot. And by the way, I'm doing about a page to 2 pages a day, guys. So I'm on pace, hopefully, to finish this summer. I'm hoping. Please pray for me. It's a lot of work. It really is. But, you know, I'm looking at the numbers even for our show here, and it's showing me that only 20% of my viewers are subscribers and 80% of you aren't subscribers. And I ask for your support on not just liking this channel right now. If you hit that like button, it is free. It doesn't cost you anything, but it really does, guys. I wouldn't say it if it didn't support my channel. It really does help push my video out there to viewers who have not seen any of my content. And, you know, if you want to see and support a new conservative talk show like the Bald Brad Show, because other conservative shows are being targeted, the more shows, the better, hit the subscribe button and also the bell notification button, and you'll get all my videos out there, or YouTube will get my videos out there, hopefully, to you, as long as you have both hit at the same time. I hear if you have one or the other, it's not working, but I will continue to keep you up to date on everything that the left is doing to destroy this country, as well as the Biden administration. And I will also point what the Biden administration is doing good. If you've been watching the show regularly, you know that I do that every now and then. I'll say, hey, you know, kudos to Biden for doing this, bad on Biden for doing that. And we did the same thing for Trump, and I did the same thing for Obama before I ever did this show as well. But folks, I really hope that your Monday is starting off great. I really hope you have a blessed and lovely week, and I'll see you here tomorrow on the Bald Brad Show.